What is time? Welcome to Philosopher's Corner. I'm John. What is time? We're all living in it. We're surrounded by it all the time. We even use the word itself to refer to itself. What is it? So for this one, do another philosophy thought exercise. We're going to go back to the beginning of time, right before time, the Big Bang, right before everything, the moment, right before everything comes into creation, right? The cosmic egg. You got the circle, the sphere in the middle of the void, and it has all the potential life in it. Creation as we know it, as we're experiencing it. But right before then, outside of it, there's no time, there's nothing, there's just the void. So we're in that moment before creation gives birth to itself. And in that moment, it's in a stasis and there's no time. Then it erupts, it bursts, it gives birth to itself into the void. All the energy, all the creation starts to go. And in that very first moment, where the first wave of energy came out, the very first moment, that energy, as it moved into the space that was being created, had sequential movements, progressions of motion that began the first thread of time. Very much you can look at it like a stop motion. Just, it was in a stasis, and then the very first pieces of energy started to wave out of it. And whatever the first way you measure each progression of the movement of it through space, the derivative of it was time. Because now there was this trail of motion, of faint energies coming off of that movement of energy through space. And then matter seems to be derivative as well from this initial movement. So time, we can see, is this energy stream that appears to be a derivative of movement through space. And in that same moment, if we can envision that in all of creation's in this circle, in this sphere, right before it goes out, propagates in all directions infinitely and eternally, if we imagine that moment where we're seeing the energy go through space for the first time, and we see that time is now being born, whereas like prior to it, there was just nothing. Now there's things coming through, and whoa, now there's like this concept, this time thing's happening where looking at it, you can tell that something happened before it to get there. Time's like this forensic watermark because it leaves an imprint of all the things that happened as a permanent yet layered version of a decay of time, description of motion, like a reality decay, like a trail, like a wake, as this fresh energy goes through and creating sort of activating the links of cause and effect in other dimensions, time related dimensions, all sorts, because these are just initial derivatives just from this movement through the space of the energy. And then you can imagine around the sphere of that happening in every single direction, 360, right, around a sphere, right? And then all of the way that even within those, because all of creation was coming out of that moment, right? So the density, as far as our human minds are concerned, the density of that sort of discharge is basically unified, even though it doesn't look like it's, I mean, it's basically solid, right? You think that like all of the creations come out of it, and how intermeshed it is with itself, and how interlinked, and like just all the factors and all the overlaid dimensions. So even though it looks like it's just, it's, that's the great conundrum too, because it's like it's completely unified and has a ton of space in it. So go figure. I think it's due to phase, like when you phase shift in dimensions, because all the dimensions are overlaid. So if you just like stick to one dimension, then there's plenty of space in it. But then when you view big picture, because when all the dimensions are occupying the same space, then it's actually solid. That's why you like phase into a dimension. There's all these other things, these other factors, of which time is a thread that goes through all the dimensions, right? Now that we're seeing that like time is this sort of wake of the energy moving through space, because what are dimensions? Dimensions are a bunch of spaces living side by side or slightly out of phase, like blocks of space, like a tesseract, right? A cube in space. That's basically what every reality is. And so in terms of, you can have as many of those like near each other in space from an overview as you want, especially when you have time involved, because time acts like this thread. It's this sort of forensic thread, and it does because it keeps an order as things occur. Because if anything else that we learn as we watch through like energy going through this space, as it creates time in the moment, it creates time. Is that it shows order. And it gives context, and it acts as a preservation somehow. Like the energy does create these sort of reality wakes, and they're real. They exist. You know, it's also why, that also explains, it's sort of a natural categorization of energies time provides, because then they can be reference points, they can be things for memories for beings, they can be energetically accessible by people who weren't there for the event. I mean, that's what historians on Earth do. They like just go through the timeline and basically use psychic abilities to tap into what's hanging in, like time anchors a consciousness as it goes through. Because if it's just this energy moving through the space, right? And you can just see all the things being created off of it. And then to a point where once you get enough webs of time going, then you can become aware of time itself. Beings in the time stream can become aware of time itself as a force, And now we're in a space where quantum mechanics, one of the fundamental experiments in quantum mechanics, is the double slit phase experiment, where they shoot molecules through two slits, and basically when no one's watching, they act like waves, and then when somebody's watching, they look like particles. And they further do the experiment where they control whether or not, basically, like they shoot the molecules through, and the way they set up the experiment is such that if you're not looking at them, they come out one way. Like they're only supposed to come out one way, but if you look at them, it goes back in time and changes which one came out. And it's depending on your observation, so that even though it's like setting out like the wave particles, and you look, it'll go back in time and change it to the particles. And that's been widely accepted experiment, replicated, so that it goes back in the time stream and changes it, even though the observer stays in the same timeline, but the results go back, and they go back to the source, because then when they do the experiment, it's like the actual molecules go back in time and act as though they had been being observed the entire time. And when I saw that, I realized that that's like really the base technology you need for what we call time travel. It's not the way we think about it. It's this stream where energy is moving through time, moving through space, and creating time. And it's more of a fluid force in that regard, because it goes through all the dimensions. And most of like common physics just stays in these particular dimensions. But now quantum mechanics is showing that like that's old thing. This is, as we evolve as a species and get more intelligent, you take quantum mechanics as a baseline, and changes basically everything. So time. So a lot of people, to address what common perceptions of time are, is that they're linear. Like saying that time is linear means that what I just described in the double phase experiment can't happen. That experiment alone proves scientifically that the traditional orthodox notion of linear time is done. Now, it doesn't mean that almost all the physics effects of linear time are in play. They are in play. Like, we're moving forward in time, and there's cause and effect, and there's causation, and all these other things. It doesn't wipe any of that. It adds on top of it that, yeah, there's these other streams that can be tapped into. Because if we go back to this philosophical thought experiment at the beginning of the universe, we can see that time has too much crap heaped on it from our modern age. Of time has been used as an instrument to make people work and to coordinate projects and to, make people productive and to enslave people and to also, coordinate great things. But also there's been a lot of manipulation of the concept of time. You can't manipulate time itself, but you can manipulate people's perceptions of time and concepts of time. And it's clear that for whatever reason, time was used as a tool for, productivity and business and a whole bunch of other things in our civilizations predominantly. Now, there's plenty of civilizations that know exactly, what I'm saying, because to be honest, if you see any like shaman from any country on earth or any tribe or anywhere, wherever they pop up, I mean, whether it's like your Kalahari Bushman shaman or your suburban, teen acid guy who figures it out, they get to the same thing where time is this more of this stream, and it's an energy flow it is a derivative, because when we're going back, I mean, the time until motion happens through space, the time doesn't really kick in. And once it does, it is universal, because all the motion's happening. So all of these things are being catalyzed. It seems to be, a synergistic force, because also as with all things, it seems in this universe, when we place our attention on it, it interacts in various ways. Right now, I'm focusing my attention on it, and it's just showing me more information. As opposed to if I weren't concentrating on the concept of time right now, I wouldn't be tapped into all this stuff and thinking about it in this sort of nature. And as we know, with cause and effect, especially conscious cause and effect, that's what establishes a connection, and a connection can become a relationship, and then relationship can become a network. And we can have that relationship with other things. So like when we're talking about time right now, we're establishing a connection, a relationship, and a network with time. And if we understand, philosophically, it's just this energy moving through space, then we can say that it's one of the primary forces of life, however you want to think about that. And that in a very real way, we're all born of it or born from it. Because if time is this thread that we can connect back to that close to the moment of creation, I mean, that fills me with a profound sense of connection and gratitude, and like a deep knowing that I can feel, because the time now it's the time that's connected to the beginning. So now I can feel like a real connection to the beginning. Oh. What is time? Thanks for spending some time here at Philosopher's Corner. Uh, wow. I hope you have a good day. Enjoy your time.